County, Pennsylvania, on behalf of the Lawrence County Republican Committee, we thank you for coming to our event this evening. The first Senate debate for 2022 and also the governor's debate. So on behalf of my committee, we welcome you, we thank you for attending, and on behalf of the historic Scottish Rite Cathedral, we welcome you to our event. And with that, would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, Joan Frost will sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all around hearts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let us bow our head in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you for the efforts of all those that worked so hard to make this evening possible. Lord, this is a time of great trouble in our country. This is a time in which leaders need to step up. And we are thankful for all those that have come here to Newcastle, Pennsylvania tonight to share their visions of this country, to end the tyranny that is currently going on within our Commonwealth, and to allow liberty to reign once again. Father, these people are much like Nehemiah was in the Bible, that as the walls have fallen, you are calling people to step up and to rebuild those walls, to rebuild this country, to rebuild faith. So, Father, we pray a blessing on each and every candidate. For anybody that puts their name in for public office is to be blessed. We pray a blessing upon their families, upon their health, and upon their wealth. For we know that the attacks will be terrible. But we know that with your providence and with your grace surrounding them, they shall be victorious. We thank you once again for this day, and we thank you once again for your Son. For without him, we would be nothing. So, Father, we give you the glory, the honor, and the praise, for you are so worthy. We pray this in the blessed name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
It's with great pleasure that I want to introduce to you our moderator, Jeff Ward, who has so graciously accepted this position. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Now, before we get started, I found out that there's somebody that's not here tonight who would just love to say hello to you. So without further ado, Mr. McKim back there.
To the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA. It is pride in every American heart, and it's time to standing still. To be an American, here at least I know I'm free. I'm happy for the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend your skills today. There's no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. To be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I forget the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless the USA.
Terrific people, Lawrence County GOP Chair Lynn Ryan. For years on CNN, a battle that ultimately is going to be won because they get their low ratings now. They'll bring back their ratings quickly, but they're not that smart. So I just want to thank those two incredible people, all of the friends that are gathered together. Western Pennsylvania, as you know, we did very well there. We did very well in the state. We won the state. It's something that I can get a massive amount at 10 o'clock in the evening, and then all of a sudden, things closed and reopened, and voila, look what happened. So we have to be a lot sharper the next time when it comes to counting the vote. It's a famous saying that sometimes the vote counter is more important than the candidate, and we can't let that ever happen again. They have to get tougher and smarter. A lot of things are going on right now in Pennsylvania concerning the 2020 election. But you look at what's happened with Biden, they are destroying our nation, and they're destroying it before our very eyes. I said that energy was not going to be what they were going to take care of, and I was right. We were energy independent, and now we're not. We're dealing with OPEC, and we're dealing with all the other players, including very big Saudi Arabia, Russia, countries that we didn't have to deal with in terms of our energy anymore. Now we do, because they've destroyed the energy business before our very eyes. You look at the prices. When I left, a gallon of gas was $1.87. And now it's $5, $6, in some parts of California, $7. It's a disgrace what they've done, and that affects Pennsylvania very much, as you know. And Second Amendment, and they want to raise your taxes, and they want to take away all of the things we've done having to do with the military, with our vets. We had a 92% approval rating with our vets, the highest in the history of, in recorded history, where they go out and they do polls of the vets who had 92% approval. Nobody's ever had anything like that. So what's happened to our country is so sad. When you look at the borders, we went from the worst borders. That's what we got now. We got the worst borders. We could have the best, but they don't want to do that. They don't want to complete the wall. They want open borders. Not even believable. We had a year ago the strongest borders we've ever had. And now we have the weakest and the worst. And we have not only people coming in from prisons of other countries, all over we have human traffickers, we have drugs pouring in at a record that we've never seen before. And then let's go to Afghanistan, that unbelievably incompetent withdrawal. And I was all for it. I was the one who brought it down to 2,500 great troops. And now we're embarrassed all over the world the way we did it. They took out the military first. They gave up Bagram, which is a phenomenal, very important place, not so much for Afghanistan, but because it's a mile away. It's an hour away from the nuclear plant of China, where they make their nuclear weapons. And it would have been a nice thing to have. Spent billions of dollars building it many years ago. We gave it up like it was nothing left in the dead of night. So that whole thing with Afghanistan, that incompetent and the incompetence shown is, I think, the most embarrassing thing that I've ever witnessed having to do with our country. Obviously, the borders, the way they're pouring into our country, we could have a different country very soon. So I said this was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen. I never knew, and nobody knew it could be this bad. They've just taken over and destroying our country. And I appreciate that Western Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania is fighting so hard, not only for the 2020 presidential theft and hoax, but also for just our country itself. And we love you, and we'll get there sometime. I just want to tell you that I really appreciate Lynn and Jeff and all of the people. You're great patriots, great Americans. We will make America great again. We have to start from a little different base, but it'll happen, and it'll happen fast. All of a sudden, you see the time flies. So we have to be strong and just remain patriotic, and we will make America great again. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
No. There. How's that? Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the first of two debates tonight. This is the United States Senate debate. And just so you know, those who are on the stage have filed with the state Republican Party and also by last part of the seat, which means they're seeking the Republican Party endorsement. And they are also have filed with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Secretary of State's office, and all the things that you need to do there. So that's what you had to do to be on this stage. Over there at the other table, you'll see the Daniel F. and Candy Eichenbaum. They are the timekeepers. So I will be looking at them, they will be looking at the candidates and flashing them all sorts of hand signals and cards and anything else that finally says you've got 15 seconds left or you're done. So, and our candidates are all terrific people, and I'm sure that they will, go along with the program here. Let me just say a little bit about the rules. The Senate candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to the long-form questions. And obviously, as you will see, we have fewer candidates on the Senate side tonight than we do governor's candidates, so the time had to be worked out accordingly. There will be 1 minute for closing statements, and I'll ask a question, the same question to each of them, and go around. Now, know that I think it was today, candidates or their campaigns picked a number out, so they will appear on the stage in the order of the number that they themselves or their campaign drew. So we will begin with the, let me just see if there's anything else here. Oh, yeah, there is one other thing. Before we start, I want to thank all these candidates, the senator and governor, for doing this. As I often say to people, Pennsylvania is not Vermont or Delaware. This is a very, very big state. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of energy, a lot of money, time away from your family, to go out and be willing to do this. So I just want to start by thanking all of them for doing that. So we begin with the Senate race candidates here, and they are in the order that they, I've got them here in alphabetical order, but they will be up here in terms of where they do their spot. Kathy Barnett. Kathy is a veteran, a former adjunct professor of corporate finance and author, as well as a conservative political commentator. Jeff Bartos. Jeff is a successful businessman, the 2018 Republican nominee for lieutenant governor, and the founder of the Pennsylvania 30-Day Fund, a nonprofit providing forgivable loans to small businesses affected by COVID-19 and the related business shutdowns. George Boschetta. George is a nationally acclaimed trial lawyer, litigator, author, and lecturer who has been written about and featured in dozens of trade journals and legal publications. He was also appointed Pennsylvania State Boxing Commissioner in 1995, serving until 2002. Martin Rosenfeld. Martin is the Deputy Sheriff of Elton County. He is the Jay Township, Pennsylvania State Constable, the co-owner of Martyr Rose Inc., the Big Trout, and MR Guns. He has over 40 years of accounting, tax preparation, and management experience, and is the treasurer of the Elton County Republican Party. So, let's start with the first question. The way I'll do this is I will start with, and I guess this is you, Martin, the person closest to me, and go down to George, and then the second round, we'll do it in reverse, and we'll just keep going back and forth. And what? Yes, absolutely. When you get your time, yes. Sorry, feel free to do that. As a matter of fact, if you'd like to do that right now, I thought I'd sort of done the brief version, but if you'd like to do it, right, all of you, say your piece. Starting with Mark right here.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me. What I'm going to talk about tonight is what I'll do as your U.S. Senator. What I will do is support you in every bill. Every bill that comes through affects Pennsylvania as well as the rest of the country. What I won't do is sign off on any bill that has any red flag laws or anything that takes away from our economy here in Pennsylvania, i.e. the energy, the gas, the coal, and the farming, the agriculture, the things that we need that we supply the rest of the country with. We can independently support the United States with the resources we have here, and we're not having that in our Congress and in our Senate right now as far as support what I've seen with our current senators. They kind of turned their back on us. I will not support anything with red flag. The Second Amendment and the First Amendment are my priorities. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be here today to present myself to you. Listen, last week, over 5,200 schools shut down and went virtual. And you know these unions will close our nation's schools again. At the beginning of December of last year, Joe Biden came before the American people and predicted a winter of death. And then he immediately scurried back into his man cave, making absolutely no accommodations for adequate therapeutics. And as a result, people are dying. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, more people are shot in the last 2 weeks in Philadelphia than who died from COVID. Pennsylvania now ranks number 4th in the number of overdose deaths. That's not a race we want to come in first at. Critical race theory is being taught in our school. Our nation is more divided than we have ever been in our life. Our borders are open. We should be talking about economics, and yet no one seems to want to talk about economics. Our nation is in trouble, and we all know it. We all know that there is something fundamentally going wrong with how our nation is being governed right now. I love my country. Well, let me tell you, the America that allowed a little black girl who grew up on a pig farm underneath the bottom rung of the economic ladder, that America is fast coming to a close. That America that allowed me, I grew up in a home with no insulation, no running water, an outhouse in the back and a well on the side. That America that afforded me the opportunity to claw my way and create a different life for myself, that America is fast coming to a close. And let me just end with the fact that we should know by now that what kind of candidate we need fighting for us. I hope by the end of this evening, I will have shown you that I am the candidate you need to get behind. Thank you.
Good evening. I never tire on the campaign trail highlighting that being a lifelong Pennsylvanian is a distinguishing characteristic in this campaign for the United States Senate in Pennsylvania. And now, I think the four of us here, we can add that finding Lawrence County and showing up for all of you is another distinguishing characteristic. My name is Jeff Bartos, and there are two things I want you to know about me. First, I'm running for the United States Senate because Main Street, Pennsylvania is being crushed. Crushed by inflation, mandates, and crime rates. Inflation is at record highs, and small businesses, the ones that survive the shutdowns, can't find people or bear the cost to stay open. Our number one export is our children. It should be energy, but it's our children who are fleeing our Commonwealth for better opportunities elsewhere. The far less insane push to defund the police has demoralized our women and men in blue and allowed criminals to run amok and ransack our stores. But the second thing I want you to know about me is I am optimistic about our future. I was born and raised in Berks County. My wife Cheryl of 24 years was raised in Lehigh County. We are the proud parents of two great girls, Emily and Sarah, that we raised in the southeastern part of the state. All of us are lifelong Pennsylvanians, and I am optimistic about our future because I've seen what we can do when we work together as Pennsylvanians. As Jeff mentioned, early in the pandemic, I started a nonprofit to do something about the failure of our government. That nonprofit, the 30-Day Fund, helped save over 1,000 small businesses across all 67 counties crushed by government shutdowns. This entire effort was centered on my belief that our fellow citizens were the solution, not the government. Let me close with this open by saying, you cannot help save Main Street in this Commonwealth if you can't find Main Street. No place is more like Main Street than right here in Newcastle. It's a shame that many people didn't show up here tonight, but I will always show up for you here in Newcastle and every small town, every Main Street across this great Commonwealth of ours. Thank you so much.
I would first like to thank the people in this county, in this town, for such a gracious hosting of this debate, and myself, who only announced it for the county. Yes, my name is George Leggett, and I'm a trial lawyer from Philadelphia. But I wasn't always a trial lawyer. I started out this life being left on the doorstep of an orphanage in Brooklyn, New York. And I lived there with the Sisters of Mercy for the formative years of my life. And while I was there, I learned some core principles: hard work, honesty, respect for others. And I grew up fast, and I used those values, and I became a success. I became a success not just because I maybe I was talented, but because this country has set up a democracy, a system, a set of core principles that allow people, no matter where they come from, as Kathy Barnett just explained, no matter where we come from, we can be successful. We can make a better life for ourselves and for our children. That way of living, those core principles, are now under attack. And for years, I've been fighting the woke liberal mob, not because I was running for Senate or any other office. I was fighting them because that's the right thing to do. When they came to tear down the Columbus statues in Philadelphia at Pittsburgh and Shenley Park,
I was the one at my expense who fought the mayors of both of those cities and won. When Larry Krasner, the George Soros-backed DA, who was completely responsible, I fought Larry Krasner, and I kept them.
Okay.
I want to be your senator. I'd like to introduce you more about myself.
That's time.
At some point, I'll get you.
I'll start at this end. A United States Senator has two main responsibilities. First, to represent your state and deal on a federal level with the various challenges facing our state. Secondly, of course, is to serve in the role of a national legislator, famously one of the 100. In this case, the 100 senators who are charged with working with the President of the United States, remember that name, and your colleagues in the House and Senate national policy. With that in mind, what do you see as your first legislative priority for Pennsylvania if you are elected, and what would be your first national legislative priority as the United States Senator?
Well, as far as the Pennsylvania, we need to get our energy resources back up and running. We need to get our people working. Without the people who have built this state and who have, through their tax dollars, supported this state, we'll never get to reopen and fully vest our children in the future here. As far as federally, I'd like to see term limits as one of my priorities, and I'd like to keep the First and Second Amendments intact as they are written, as all the others. I'd like to see immigration stopped to a point where we can get back to the proper vetting of our immigrants coming in and vetting them towards citizenship.
Nothing.
Yeah. I agree with everything Martin just said. Let me add, I spent 3 months with our farmers last year because I wanted to understand. When I went into the grocery stores and saw the empty shelves, and they were telling me that the empty shelves are really an indication we're just doing so well. As a farmer, as someone who grew up on a farm, I knew that wasn't true. And so I spent 3 months with our farmers to understand what's really going on. And you're right, energy is huge for our farmers, most of them entering into these particular contracts. Another thing is that every state is a border state, and yet we have immigration, unlawfully present people being transported into our state under the cover of darkness. Next, foreign affairs is everything. China is our #1 threat. We don't hear anyone talking about it. What we hear is Joe Biden and Blinken telling us they're just another competitor. They are not. They are our #1 enemy from a foreign affairs perspective, and they have just entered into an unholy alliance with Russia. These people do not want to be superpower just over the continent of Asia. They want to be superpower, period. And they are doing, and they have the ability to do so because they smell weakness, not just in the White House, but in our legislative branches as well. We need people who understand the issues, all of the issues, and who will fight for us, and that is what I'm offering you.
As I mentioned, Jeff, I'm running because Main Street, Pennsylvania is getting crushed. Now I'll talk about something we need to fight to make sure it doesn't happen, and then something we need to fight sure that it does happen. We need to win this seat, to hold and then take back the United States Senate to make sure that the filibuster survives the threat that is posed. This seat could decide whether H.R. 1 and SB 1, what the Democrats called the For the People Act, and what we all call the For the Democrats Act. This seat could decide whether that disastrous legislation sees the light of day, and so many other bad ideas see the light of day if the filibuster were to fall. And rest assured, every Democrat running for the seat will blow up the filibuster on day one. So that's priority #1, to stop mayhem from ensuing. On the positive side, saving Main Street means a quality education for every child. And that means at the federal level, legislation that will empower parents and students to take federal dollars that they're already paying in taxes and take that as educational savings accounts to pick the school that is best for those children. Parents must be empowered. It's our job. It's the civil rights issue of our time. On the national stage, Jeffrey, if I still have time, On the national stage, many of you probably know, New York City is now put into law with the new mayor, the prior mayor pushed it, legislation that allows 800,000 non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. We need a national, federal, constitutional amendment to make it very clear, we can write it here tonight probably on a napkin. Only United States citizens may vote in elections in the United States.
Well, of course, I agree with everything they just said, but I think it is very, very important to remember that none of those goals, none of those objectives can be accomplished if we live in a state of fear. If we live in a state where public safety is put aside, where citizens are afraid to go down the street, go to their businesses, go to restaurants, without public safety, the rule of law, district attorneys, mayors that are willing to fulfill their obligation. None of these wonderful suggestions are possible. We can't worry about the filibuster if there's people out there that want to kill us. We can't worry about growing Main Street if bands of thugs are looting our stores. So when you talk about what's our first priority, Jeff, the first priority has to be to return sanity to our public safety. We must get rid of these George Soros district attorneys. We have to get rid of these mayors in these major towns that are adopting all of these woke, liberal, left-wing, crazy policies. We have to get back to our core values. That's what makes us great Americans. That's what gives us jobs.
Work back the other way. And I should tell you, we've had a few state legislators who have expressed an interest in what's going on up here and asking questions. So this is one that comes from State Representative Darrell Metcalf. Despite falling methane emissions in the United States, the EPA is currently drafting methane emission regulations that will add billions in cost to oil and gas producers across the nation, including conventional and unconventional oil and gas producers in Pennsylvania. How do you assess the playing field for energy supply in the United States? Is it a level playing field for all types of energy? And if not level, what are your plans to secure cheap, reliable, plentiful energy for America?
And I believe this is my
Yes.
I get to go twice in a row. Look, of course, President Trump achieved great things for us when he was president for energy independence. We became energy independent. We were not reliant on OPEC or China or Russia. And when President Biden took office and started shutting down the most valuable resource this country has, which is the Keystone Pipeline, and shutting down our ability to go through gas that we have under our feet. We have the richest deposits under our feet right here in Pennsylvania. We have the ability, this Commonwealth, these people that are here, to actually make this country energy independent. And it's being squandered by a radical thinking, misguided president who believes that everything has to be judged in accordance with some kind of climate change lens. Well, let me tell you something. That's the same mistake that was made with COVID. You cannot shut down the American economy. You cannot put people in their homes. You cannot employ them for some lofty goal. We have to survive in the meantime. We need energy independence, and we can get there, and Pennsylvania has the resources to do it.
Thriving main streets across all 67 counties are dependent on harnessing our God-given bounty of natural gas here in the Commonwealth. We are sitting on 2 Saudi Arabia's worth of natural gas right under our feet. I'm sure all of us up here have been. You've had the privilege to be in the gas fields. I was in Washington County just a couple of weeks ago. I was at a drill site and a production site. It's not just in our gas-producing counties. It's all of the main streets and all of the businesses across all 67 counties that benefit from downstream production. So here in Pennsylvania, as a United States Senator, it is a critical duty for any of us who would take the job. It's a critical duty for all of us, any of us, to fight for Pennsylvania's energy industry. And that means fighting at the national level to make sure pipelines are not held up. It means making sure that the cracker plant in Beaver County, which is an unbelievable generational investment in western Pennsylvania, is not only that, it is a down payment on Pennsylvania's industry, because as I discussed in my open, our children are fleeing Pennsylvania. Our number one export are young people who are going elsewhere to California, not to California, of course, not, to Florida. Sorry, these are in California. Florida and Texas for opportunity. We want them to be here. We should not have to take a plane flight to see our children and our grandchildren. Healthy main streets means a healthy, thriving energy industry here in Pennsylvania, and it is absolutely incumbent on our next United States Senator to fight for Pennsylvania's energy.
Thank you.
How many of you know that Joe Biden is not king? We probably need to remind some of our legislators, and not just Democrats. Democrats are doing what Democrats do. They have two left feet. They will never be able to turn right. They are doing what we know them to do. The problem is, our Republicans on our side of the aisle who are sitting there allowing Joe Biden with a phone in a pen, kind of like Barack Obama, to just make up edicts as he goes. He does not have that right. We have three co-equal branches of government. One does not usurp the other. Joe Biden is not king of America, although many on our side is allowing him to behave that way, regardless of what issue we're talking about. So, first of all, we need to get our legislators, we need people in legislation, that's why I want to go there, who understand that it is Congress's, it is the Senate's responsibility to write legislation and to control the purse, right? The executive branch can't do much when you have legislators who have a backbone made of something a little bit more sturdier than ear cartilage. Secondly, the reason why people are not investing money into this, into drilling wells and things like that, when you look at the number of wells, they are significantly lower than they were pre-pandemic. The reason why they are not putting wells back online, many of you already know that, is because Joe Biden has created a very hostile environment in the energy industry. Who in their right mind is going to invest the amount of money and capital? Just down in Washington, D.C., they were prepared to put online another gas-fired unit, but because of climate change purveyors, they withdrew their permits. So at a time when we need more energy, because energy is up 33% right now, we have people not putting those resources to play.
This is a topic that hits close to home. As many of you probably don't know, Elk County, where I'm from, is one of the largest methane producers in Pennsylvania. We supply New York City with all of their methane gas. My son, who has lost his job in the gas well industry, trying to support 3 children, a wife, and a new home, is a direct result of what's happening right now. The fight to get those gas wells back online, and they weren't just shut down by, and I call them resident Biden, they're also done by our governor, Wolf. And that's where this stance here, the 4 of us, are so strong to get Pennsylvania back online, supporting our governor candidates as well as each other as Senate candidates. And this is what the Republican Party should be. We need to stand behind each other and push each other to move forward instead of downgrading and fighting. The fight is against our government, it's not against our people.
Thank you. This being a Republican Senate debate with an audience of Republicans, it has come to my attention that there are at least 2 Republican Senate candidates, one in Alaska and one in Missouri, who have stated that if elected, They would not support the re-election of Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell. Whether Republicans recapture the Senate, as is possible, or remain in the minority, which of you candidates would support Senator McConnell remaining as the GOP leader in the Senate? They look stunned.
Well, is it Senator McConnell or Senator Pittman, whoever just put up his caucus, whoever the caucus puts forward?
Right. But, I mean, he's been subjected to a lot of criticism from President Trump and others. And when I began to realize there are people out there actively running on this in Republican primaries, I thought we should ask you, each of you.
I think it's good for new blood. Whether or not I will vote for him or not, that's still up for debate. But I understand that people should not go to D.C. and the only way we get them out of D.C. is that they die. That's to come in now. We also need those who have a steady hand, but there have been some huge missteps on our side of the aisle and how to deal with these Democrats. Our side needs to realize that these Democrats are not playing with us. They really mean fundamentally change our country, and by fundamentally change, I mean screw it up real good to where we'll never be able to get it back on track. We need leaders who understand that and who are not benefiting whether Democrats win or Republicans win. We need people who understand what is at stake and who love this country. That is what I would be looking for in the next leader for the Senate.
Let me get to Georgia. Go ahead.
I would have a hard time supporting Mitch at this point because he's flip-flopped against the Republicans in some issues. Like President Trump in some of his stances, and he hasn't represented us as I feel Republican representatives should.
I think Mitch McConnell did both himself and the Republicans a terrible disservice. On the one hand, he voted, as he should have, against impeaching President Trump. But immediately after, on the floor of the Senate, he gave a scathing indictment of President Trump. That is not how we, as Republicans, galvanize and become a force and restore our country and our values. So with all due respect to Mitch McConnell, I salute him for the public service he's given us. I think he's worn out his welcome. I think when President Trump returns, we need a new leader in the Senate.
Okay. As Americans learned in horror, President Biden.
I didn't really answer. I was just trying to clarify the question. I was asking, are you assuming in that question that he's already been put forward by the caucus? So, I mean,
I assume that he's going to run, that if he runs, so, yes.
So he didn't run put forward. So I wanted to say, because I didn't get to answer the question.
Okay.
I wanted to clarify it. So,
You may have done my answer.
yeah. On the day I signed my paperwork to run for this office, before I signed that paperwork, I signed the term limits pledge. I signed the U.S. term limits pledge to serve no more than 2 terms if I'm fortunate enough to be elected by all of you, to represent you, and then re-elected if I decided to run again. I would not serve more than 2 terms. And I agree, Kathy said that very well, that one of the major problems we have in Washington, and we'll just speak about Washington, is that people are down there for 6, 7, 8 terms. That said, I do believe 30, 40 years from now, we will still be talking about the conservative judges and justices that President Trump appointed and that Senator McConnell very skillfully led through the United States Senate. I also note, as I mentioned before about the filibuster, that but for the bold stand that Senator McConnell took in 2016, 17, and 18, when it was very, very difficult to do what he did, he preserved the filibuster, because but for that bold stance and that leadership today, we would be facing President Biden signing the so-called For the People Act.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Now let me move on to another topic. As Americans learned in horror, President Biden engaged in an abrupt withdrawal from Afghanistan, the chaos resulting in the deaths of 13 Marines and leaving an unknown number of Americans and Afghan allies behind. You know, if you listen to Sean Hannity's radio show, he begins every show by counting down how many days it's been and Americans left and all of this kind of thing. if you're elected, what would be your policy goals in dealing with and helping to set American foreign policy? And we'll start with Mark.
Well, watching what happened in Afghanistan reminded me of what happened in Vietnam. I am part of that era. And I watched, it was like deja vu. The helicopter, the abandonment. Foreign policy and our withdrawal are orchestrated through periods of time, not rushed in an overnight sensation that has to be done. He had 8 months to make decisions, and like everything he's done nothing. And the only way to prevent that is for Congress to step up and do what they're supposed to do as far as regulating our military and our military use around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you can come up with the solution to the foreign affairs question, you have to first be willing to identify the enemy. And right now, as I said in my opening, China is our #1 threat. China is. And yet, Biden, time and time again, followed by Blinken, has called them just our mere peers, just fellow competitors out here. I think you need to recognize that. But you asked another question about Afghanistan. That was a botched exit. And as I watched that, spending 10 years in the military, having some time looking and working around those who were strategizing for the various drills that we were doing, I knew right away that, or the question, I'm sorry?
15 seconds.
Already. The question I asked myself is that if he was trying to botch it, what would he have done differently? And I can't think of anything. And now I look at our nation and I say to myself, if he was trying to destroy this country, what would Democrats do differently? And I really can't think of too many things that they would be doing differently.
Jeff?
Pennsylvania, so let's talk about Afghanistan very briefly. The exit from Afghanistan, executed, if you will, by the Biden administration, was a slap in the face to every military family, every service member who put their life on the line. All of us in this room had broken hearts watching what was happening there. When we talk about national security, all of us as Pennsylvanians, right under our feet is one of the keys to our national security plan for the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years. Pennsylvania's energy resources are the key to negotiating with Russia. Right now, President Biden is capitulating in Kazakhstan. He's capitulating in Ukraine. He's capitulating to Russia, letting Russia dictate what goes on in Europe, separating us from our European allies, because he doesn't have the guts to unleash Pennsylvania's energy prosperity. When we talk about seeing a Main Street in Pennsylvania, it starts with our natural gas resources here. We, as Pennsylvanians, have a key role to play in moving the United States forward on the national stage. And finally, I totally agree with Kathy. China is our #1 strategic threat, and President Trump has it on the run. President Biden will skip his leg.
George?
I've had the honor in the last decade or so of serving on the board of directors of the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, which is strictly dedicated to raising scholarship money for the children of fallen first responders and military service people. And it is a wonderful organization. 100% of every dollar goes to those children's scholarships. And the Marine Corps and the Army and the Navy, they all have a value. Their #1 value, Semper Fi, faithful forever. You do not leave Americans on foreign soil. You do not embarrass the very troops whose lives have been put at stake, so that you can declare victory at home in a hallowed, awful fashion. I am disgusted, absolutely disgusted by what President Biden did, how he embarrassed us, and how he violated the most important principle the military has, Semper Fi.
I checked in yesterday with the famous or infamous national debt clock yesterday. The U.S. national debt was approaching, and may have reached it today, $30 trillion. What would be your policy on halting the massive spending that keeps adding to that debt And how would you achieve it?
Well, first I start with making government smaller. I'd probably cut out some of the lifelong salaries of retiring congressmen and senators. If we look at those compared to our Social Security system, they are 100 times larger than the people that actually built this country.
Listen, Republicans literally come before you and talk about, oh, we're going to cut taxes and we're going to deregulate. And imagine the economy like a bicycle. And on that bicycle, you have two pedals. One pedal is tax cuts, the other pedal is deregulation. And we're just pedaling our little hearts out. And we're moving a little bit. But imagine the chain on that bike is the Federal Reserve. And if the chain on your bike is broken, you're not going to go very far, right? And the Federal Reserve is broken. So the number one thing we need to do is, again, it goes back to our legislators. The Federal Reserve is not some kind of elite group of people who cannot be challenged and brought to bear. It is Congress's job to set the mandate, specifically the Senate job, to set the mandate of what it is the Federal Reserve should be focused on. So we can talk about the tax code, we can talk about a number of other things, but we need to find a way to grow our economy. If you want to get rid of debt, let's not talk about cutting. No one's going to cut. That's not true when they come and tell you that. We need to find ways to grow it, and we need to clarify the mandates of the Federal Reserve and get them in line.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm a business guy, and it's pretty simple when you run a business. Now, sales are key, otherwise you don't have anything else to do. But if your spending outruns your revenue, you have a problem. And last year, we grew our economy over 3%, even with Joe Biden at the helm, even with the Democrats. We grew our economy 3%. The problem is we spent at a great increase of 7%. Now, you do not need a Wharton MBA to know that that leads you pretty quickly to insolvency. And so the biggest problem we have in Washington, and this is a generational problem, guilty both for Democrats and Republicans, is we spend more than we take in. And if we are going to have healthy main streets across all 67 counties in this Commonwealth, then we need our federal government to start acting more like our great local governments act. The biggest problem we have is spending, and the biggest problem related to spending is the fact that people go down there and spend generations down there, 6, 7, 8 terms, spending money that isn't theirs.
That's time. George?
You know, when you grow up in an orphanage, you learn real fast. You don't spend money you don't have. That's what this country does. And what's going on now with this massive spending of money that we don't have is that the Democrats' solution is, oh, we'll print some more. Just print the money. That's why we have inflation. That's why we have people being paid to stay home, not to work. You cannot spend more than you have. You learn that as a 2-year-old in an orphanage. Somehow Biden never learned.
All right, George, and I'll start this out with you. We'll work back. Texas Senator Ted Cruz said the other day that if Republicans retake the House, there may be a move to impeach President Biden. If that happens, would you support or oppose impeachment, knowing that if he were impeached, his trial would be held in the Senate and you would be sitting there as a juror? 1 minute.
Well, I gained some expertise just recently in impeachment proceedings because I was called upon to help prepare Donald Trump's defense in the Senate from impeachment. And I wrote the First Amendment portion of the brief that got submitted to the Senate. So I'm not a stranger to impeachment proceedings. I would not, under the strong set of circumstances, support impeaching President Biden. The impeachment process was abused woefully by the Democrats against President Trump. Twice it was abused. You cannot just start volleying back and forth abuses of that fundamental nature of our Constitution. If a high crime or misdemeanor is committed, impeach. But so far, just for political reasons, for political stupidity, for political dementia, I would not impeach.
This is the greatest country the world has ever known. Our Constitution is a living, shining document and a beacon of hope and light around the world. Every nation that has followed and tried to follow in our footsteps with democracy and freedom and self-government looks to this country. And for over 240 years, we have met that challenge and we have been the world's leaders. We cannot continue to go down the path of running our federal government like a banana republic. George is absolutely right. If incompetence is the grounds by which we judge whether a leader should be impeached, good Lord, we'd be spending all of our time in the Senate having trials of impeachments for officials, the president, cabinet officials. That is not why I'm going to the Senate. I am going to the Senate because Main Street, Pennsylvania is getting crushed. I love this Commonwealth and I want to help move her forward. I am not going down there to go on Fox News and score political points.
If we impeach Biden, we get Kamala. So that's my short answer. Let me also say that you're absolutely right. We need to get our country working again. Enough of those who run to CNN and Fox News swinging on the edges of either side of the spectrum. We need adults in the room who will go there and get the job working. The only people who benefit when we run to the far left or to the far right are those people. But then you have middle America who is sitting here trying to figure out, how do I pay for a loaf of bread? Biden inherited an economy of 1.4% inflation. Now we're at 7% today. We have real issues, real problems. This nation is the face of freedom. And we have a bunch of children in D.C. scoring points, and Nancy Pelosi just cashed a check for $30 million on insider trading. We need adults in the room who can fix our country and get it back to working.
I have to agree with these guys. The impeachment is not the answer, because if not Kamala, we have Nancy Pelosi. We don't really have many choices. And I'm not enjoying watching Weekend at Bernie's again either. But if he was impeached, I would say guilty.
You know, Kathy's comment about Kamala Harris reminds me of years and years gone by when candidate Richard Nixon picked Maryland Governor Spiro Ted Agnew as his vice president, who was very controversial. Nixon, apparently there was controversy, and Nixon apparently remarked to his staffer, "Ted Agnew is my insurance policy." A question from Representative Rob Kaufman. In the last few years, we've heard repeated calls for red flag laws in Pennsylvania to allow confiscation of guns from persons in crisis. What is your position on red flag laws? 1 minute.
The first thing I'd like all you to know is I am one of those people that have to confiscate those firearms from people, and it's not easy to do. We already have red flag laws here in Pennsylvania, and the red flag laws that are being proposed in all of these bills that they're putting is modeled after what Governor Walker did in 2019. It is unconstitutional, in my opinion, that someone loses the right to firearms because somebody said they did something without due process. And that's what we're seeing right now. I see it in the court system, and I have to do it because that's my job. But I will not support any bill that has any red flag law in it. The National Defense Act had 30 pages that I pulled out
15 seconds
and went to a few of our congressmen because they voted for it, to find out why, and they did assure me that it would be pulled out of the bill when it passed, and it did.
We are a nation of laws, and by laws I mean we are a nation under the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear that as a citizen, as a law-abiding citizen of this nation, I have the fundamental and individual right to keep and bear arms, and that the government should not infringe upon that right. My short answer is no, I will not support red flag laws. I do not believe a disgruntled mate should have the ability to file a case against anyone and have their constitutional rights infringed upon. We are now living in a time when our when our legislators are moving through the Constitution like a whale moves through a net. And here's a newsflash: our nation does not exist apart from the U.S. Constitution. It just doesn't. There is nothing so magnanimous about you and I. It is the U.S. Constitution that separates us from every other nation, and we need adults in the room once more who understand that.
At heart, I'm a kid from Reading, Pennsylvania. I grew up in a house where my dad, for his leisure, to relax, made his own shotgun shells, made his own .45 caliber bullets. From a very young age, I was taught to take apart, clean, put back together, properly store, properly use, and have great respect for firearms. And so no, I do not support legislation that would expand any of those red flag laws. But let me go further. I will never let you down when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. I was taught by my dad that shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed, and you can rest assured that I will never let you down, because I will never let down my own seconds.
Thank you. Look, let's understand what's at stake here. Law-abiding citizens, taxpayers, hard workers, are not the source of gun violence or crime or lawlessness in our streets. The only people that are making our society unsafe are criminals and thugs and mobs. And we should not be passing any legislation that punishes the law-abiding, hard-working citizens because what a bunch of thugs and criminals do. They're the ones that are abusing the guns. They're the ones that are murdering people, not us. We don't need any further gun legislation at all against law-abiding citizens. And I would absolutely oppose any suggestion of this false narrative that law-abiding citizens have a gun problem.
Listening to all of this, I should tell you that Bob Kaufman had another question, but I think we already know the answer. The question was that the Biden administration has advocated for a renewed ban of so-called assault weapons, which are semi-autonomous rifles with cosmetic features evoking the military. What is your position on an assault weapon ban, but a ban on large capacity magazines? I mean, go ahead. 1 minute.
What I've seen in our government is these people do not know the difference between an automatic weapon and a semi-automatic weapon, or a pistol, or a revolver, or a magazine, or a clip. So how can they come out and want to vote to take these things away if they really don't know what it is? Because you're afraid of something doesn't mean it's wrong. And that's what it is. Because they're modeled after a military weapon, we played with those as children. And that's we grew up knowing that they are just that. Not toys, but firearms, and the proper use of those for hunting, for recreation, is what they were meant to do.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. What is a prerequisite to be a criminal? Yeah, you don't follow the law, right? So when you have legislators coming up saying, hey, we have another law that we're going to impose upon you, who are they imposing that law upon? Law-abiding citizens or criminals? The United States has over 300,000 laws right now on the book pertaining to firearms. Do we really think 300,001 will do the trick? No, it does not. It is about infringing upon us, law-abiding citizens. I will not support that whatsoever.
We don't have enough time here tonight to get inside the inner workings of the left-wing line. Right? I mean, we just don't have enough time. Not in 1 minute, not in an hour. But only in the left-wing line would it make sense to elect radically progressive, as they call themselves, prosecutors, district attorneys, who will not prosecute crimes, and then watch cities devolve into chaos. and then tell law-abiding citizens that you can't have the constitutionally guaranteed rights to defend yourselves. Right? Like that makes no sense in any world except in some maybe college class somewhere at Swarthmore. I don't know. But it's nuts. And of course I'm opposed, as I mentioned. You know, I forgot to mention, for my 21st birthday present, I got a Glock 21. Now I know that's a 45 caliber firearm, not say 223 or a 5.56 rifle. But no, I will stand against any movements to take away our Second Amendment rights. And you know, if I have a couple more seconds, go ask law enforcement what they think. I did a ride along with the City of York Police Department a couple of weeks ago. They go right to the women and men in law enforcement and ask their opinion on these issues.
You make this gentleman very happy. I repeat the answer I gave
Thank you. Well, we have about 12 minutes left, so we have to try and use it wisely and judiciously. Senator Rand Paul, the Republican senator from Kentucky, who is also Dr. Rand Paul, is much in the news for his tangles with Dr. Anthony Fauci over the origin of COVID, alleged gain of function research, and more. What is your view of Dr. Fauci, and do you believe COVID originated from a Wuhan lab or a wet market with bats? And should Americans get vaccinated?
I do believe that Fauci was part of this whole criminal conspiracy that we've faced for the last 2 years. I believe that it was evolved from the Wuhan lab, and that he was part of the team to make that happen. As far as vaccination, I am not, and I do not recommend to anybody, and that's based on what I've seen from people who have gotten vaccinated. The percentages right now are about 40% of people that got vaccinated have caught COVID at one level or another. They're now on their third vaccination and still continue to do it. So if it doesn't work, why should you do it?
Medical freedom. I'm all about medical freedom. Go to my website, barnettpercentage.com. I have my thoughts on a number of different issues out there, medical freedom being one of the foremost ones. Right now, we have medical freedom is synonymous with physical autonomy. We call it physical autonomy, the left calls it my body, my choice. But also, with medical freedom comes the right to question, right? And that is something we're not being allowed to do right now. As it relates to these vaccine mandates, any mandates, absolutely not. And most certainly not forcing parents to inject their perfectly healthy babies with an experimental vaccine that we do not know the long-term ramifications of and the impact of the
Yeah, so sophomore year in college, this isn't admission of anything, by the way. The sophomore year in college, I very much wanted to be a doctor, and then I met organic chemistry. And I didn't go to medical school. My daughter Sarah, by the way, is going through the same thing sophomore year. But even I know, as a wannabe doctor who didn't get there, that our CDC is completely upside down. I'm going to throw something out to the audience right now. We could all write this tonight, right here. The guidelines from our CDC, our Centers for Disease Control, ought to be the following 2 years into this nightmare. 1, if you don't feel well, stay home. 2, if you feel better, come back to work. Good, common sense. 3, if you feel really sick, call your doctor. Because that's where we are right now. It is madness to see where we are. I'm vaccinated. It's a decision I made for myself. But my core conservative belief is I trust my fellow citizens to do what is right for themselves and their families. That is my core conservative belief, and it's something we should apply to everything, including the health decisions that we make as Americans.
I believe Dr. Fauci essentially falls in the same category as Mitch McConnell. He's served us for a long time. I would thank him for his service. I would show him the same retirement community I would show Mitch McConnell. I think we've had enough of Dr. Fauci, and we need some fresh approaches and some new thinking. And let's just get on with core values in COVID and healthcare.
All right. I'll come back to this. We're China has been mentioned here tonight. What is your view of American policy towards China? Should the United States participate in the Beijing Olympics that are coming up next month? And what should be done about China buying, as we're now seeing these stories, buying tens of thousands of acres of American farmland? Now, where do we go here in this relationship?
There's nothing positive with it. We've seen them buy our farmland, we've seen them buy our beef production, our pork production, and personally, the only thing we can do is boycott those products to show them that we're not going to support them in any way. I did it in my own restaurant. Every time we get something that's substituted and it comes from China, we send it back. As for the Olympics, I feel bad for the athletes who spent years and years to get to the level that they need to go. I think we need a presence there just to show them that we aren't afraid and we need to stand up and win.
I think I've made myself pretty clear that China is our number one threat, right?
Right.
Following China as our number one threat, the second threat is China and Russia. I don't know if you know, I think I mentioned earlier, they have entered into an unholy agreement, unholy union, the two of them. These people are not playing with us. It is much bigger than beef, it's much bigger than Olympics. China as a superpower is not going to be so conciliatory, so benevolent as America has been. If you watch what they're doing to Lithuania, these people are not playing with us. They are about to do a Hong Kong on Taiwan. Taiwan matters because over 90% of our semiconductors come from there. You can't even get in your car and press your brake without a semiconductor being involved. Not only that, but we have 20% of our world trade flows through the South China Seas. If they get dominance over that, it is game over in so many regards of this nation. But not only that, but look at what they're doing in Russia. Russia and China, from the Baltics to the Balkans, it's a tinderbox. This is about to happen. The only thing that bullies understand is decisive strength, not just from Joe Biden, but from our senators as well.
All the credit in the world goes to President Trump and his administration for awakening the United States and our people to the danger and the threat that is the Chinese Communist Party. He woke us up. Now, we are not fully awake, and clearly, with Joe Biden at the helm, we are fast asleep down in Washington. No pun intended. China is a grave security threat. But when we talk about saving Main Street, Pennsylvania, this is where foreign policy intersects. Because the manufacturing jobs that were hollowed out in this Commonwealth and shipped over to China, we're in Newcastle, a proud industrial town, very much like my hometown of Reading. The jobs that left Lawrence County and my home county at first and went to China are now powering the Chinese economy, empowering them. We make 97% of our antibiotics are made in the People's Republic of China. Our manufacturing is in the People's Republic of China. We want to save Main Street, Pennsylvania. We need to bring manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, intellectual property. We need to hold them accountable and bring it back here to Pennsylvania.
I do not believe in punishing innocent athletes who worked all their lives to go to the Olympic Games because of the bad acts of China. I would not ban or support withdrawing our athletes from the Chinese Olympics. And I am reminded of when Jesse Owens was in the Olympics, when we had another existential threat in this world. And he did more good for our country and our image by being there and showing the worth of an American than not being there and taking the bat and ball and home. So I would not use the Beijing Olympics in a political way like that. But we need real strength on China. And the minute I get another minute, I'll tell you what.
Well, let me just say, we've got about 4 minutes left. I think that's about right. So I'm going to limit to 2 questions, and you can answer however you want, whatever you want to say, if you want to add to that. Much has been made of the power of big tech, its quickness to censor, etc. What do we do about all of this? What's the federal government's role, Mark?
1 minute.
better ability to break down the major players in our media outlets. Unfortunately, they're Democrat-owned, most of them, and it's going to be a hard battle until we can change the Senate and change Congress and get a Republican president back in. There's the conspiracy, and we're all feeding into it by spending money on ads. We're making them richer so they can give money back to the Democrats to put ads against us. It's a vicious cycle. Media has walked over many of us. I know myself, I've been banned off of Facebook a few times, and that was for posting a flag. And then 3 weeks later, when they let me back in, they sent me a booth for $15. I can use it as an ad. So they don't even know what they're doing out there. And Zuckerberg said that they're not really fact checkers; they're just kind of guessing as they go along. So why should we keep them at that bay?
Before you start my time, are we going to get a posting?
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
so-
I think we have.
Okay, we can start my time.
We'll ad lib here, yes.
Okay, I'm just starting my time.
You want to for a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, my time. Section 230 is a real thing. And it is something that our legislators could do. And it's not about waiting until we get Republicans back in the House. We had Republicans in the first term of the previous administration, and they did absolutely nothing. This is not just about Republican versus Democrat. This is about getting good people in office who can begin to do what is necessary. They could have done it, and they did not do it. Why? Because they are benefiting as well as the Democrats from Google and Twitter and Facebook. Nancy Pelosi, as I alluded to earlier, just received a $30 million payday because of Google, on her stock with Google, and she oversees Google in her committee. This is a problem. These people are not incentivized to work for you and I. They continue to get richer. You and I are out here fighting in the streets, not being able to walk safely down the street. It is time that if you want your nation back, now is the time. This seat is how we begin to pry our country out of its hands.
We're going to take another brief journey into the mind of the left-wing deranged person for a second. In what world does it make sense to ban the President of the United States from social media, but allow the Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader of the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, the Islamic Republic of Iran, a full platform to spew hatred, death to Israel, death to America? This goes on every day, and censors sitting in Silicon Valley or artificial intelligence are determining that. It makes absolutely no sense. Getting back to a core conservative belief, I would rather be governed by the common sense and wisdom of all of the people in this room here from 30 counties, I think the Representative Lynn was telling me. I would rather be governed by the common sense and wisdom of the people in this room than the artificial intelligence and the people sitting in Silicon Valley. Kathy's absolutely right. Section 30 is someplace we can start, but it really gets back to common sense. We need to take back our country by eliminating the power of these tech platforms.
Okay, George.
Getting back to China, the Beijing Olympics is not the problem. The problem is Taiwan. We have a contractual obligation, a treaty with Taiwan to defend them. Taiwan also produces right now virtually all of our computer chips. When China seeks to take over Taiwan, that will be the threat to this nation. And we are going to be people that know how to stand up and have the guts to meet that challenge head on. Don't worry about the Olympics. Worry about that.
All right. All good things must come to an end. But I do want to give you a little bit of a minute for a closing statement. But let me just ask one quick question of you. If you were the nominee, the Republican nominee for the United States Senate, and you're headed into the fall election, do you have confidence in the integrity of the Pennsylvania election system? 30 seconds. Who are we shot? George, start with you.
Well, I've been working election courts for 30 years, and I can tell you there's shenanigans all over the place. And I can give you chapter and verse, and you can look in the law books. I've been in the Supreme Court half a dozen times on these shenanigans. We need real election integrity. I'm afraid that people that are passing these acts that allow mail-in balloting and no excuse voting and all of that is absolutely dangerous. We cannot permit that to take place.
Okay.
I want to take Cheryl and the girls to dinner in Philadelphia this weekend. I have to show my ID and a vaccine card, or no service. I probably have to have a shirt and shoes on too. But in what world does it make sense that I have to show an ID for that, but I don't have to show an ID to vote? This is like an 85% issue on that. So yes, we need voter ID, we need voter integrity, but look, when conservatives come out and vote, we passed 2 constitutional amendments telling Tom Wolf he's not a king or a dictator. He's a governor. We elected 3 great conservative judges just a couple of months ago. We are going to win this governor's race and this Senate.
Voter ID, right? Absolutely. We have to have voter ID. Let me tell you what I did, because I did this as a private citizen. And if I could do this as a private citizen, you can imagine what I would do as your next senator. In 2020, when I ran, it was a tremendous amount of shenanigans. I did not appreciate it. I filed the very first lawsuit in the state of Pennsylvania. After that, I put together a group of about 100 people. We went door to door, 1,600 names, and we found a tremendous amount of foolishness, fraud, and shenanigans. And we need people who understand that. I don't know what happened throughout the state. I don't know what happened throughout the nation, but I know what took place in Montgomery County. And we need to begin to look at our voter roll and do what is necessary.
We'll always be doubts based on these last elections until we can fix the computer errors, as they call it, with our machines and the mail-in ballots. I mean, let's face it, our representatives went down to Texas, Arizona to see what was going on and brought us back the information 10 so different years in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Now, I'd like to give just 1 minute to each for a closing statement. If you can do that, Mark, we'll start with you.
Well,
1 minute.
the easiest fix is 3 words: made in America. We bring jobs back, we get our economy back running, and as a final thought, I'd like to say this: the lockdowns need to stop and the lockups need to start.
Listen, we've said a lot tonight. Let me just say, optics matter. Take a look at who is on this stage. I think it's very interesting that the 3 carpetbaggers who are in this race, who have galloped into our state, saying they're going to listen to us and work for us, and yet they're not here at all because they don't care about you. Joe Biden phoned this election in from his basement. These very really wealthy people are going to phone it in from their penthouses. They have no intention of really spending time with you. I also think optics matter just from the perspective of my very presence being on this stage. Pay attention to that. This primary, most of us start running around and congratulating ourselves when we get our person through the primary. The primary is not the battle, it is the general. We need someone who has the ability to not only go into a room full of Republicans, and who has the ability to go into every single group of people and move them over. We have the best story to tell. We just keep picking people who suck at telling it. Help me, and I will like to.
I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Chairman Brian, and I want to thank you, Jeffrey, for doing a great job as moderator. This November, every Democrat running will have to answer for inflation, shutdowns, mandates, crime waves, and the lives of communities that they have destroyed with their crazy policies. I didn't parachute into Pennsylvania to run for office. I'm a lifelong resident with a deep love for this Commonwealth. You cannot save Main Street if you can't find it. And those aren't just words. I started the 30-day fund because I was living alongside all of you when the pandemic struck. While we were saving small businesses across all 67 counties, others in this race were skiing in Aspen, looking at the Manhattan skyline from a beautiful mansion, or living in a foreign country. I'm running to save Main Street, Pennsylvania, because I know and love Main Street, Pennsylvania. I'm Jeff Bartos. I ask for your vote on May 17th. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
I believe that the worst of us up here at this stage would be 10 times better than the best Democrat. Delighted to be here. I'm George Magetto. I'll see you around.
All right. Thank you very much. You may have a United States Senator on this stage. Thank you. Just hang tight for a little intermission and we'll be back with governor candidates.